when I started working for an NGO involved in development, I suddenly found that my passion, my interest was in education. I suddenly realised that the people I had worked with for 25 years in schools didn't really have a clear concept of what inequality was, what human rights, what the human impact of these things were. So that became the focus of my work in Self-Help Africa.
Well, 80/20 is a development education organisation. We're not an aid and development agency as such. So for us, development education is at the very core of what development cooperation and aid is about.
I started working in community arts, and I'm an artist originally, and the project that I worked for had a really strong connection with Nicaragua, and we began exchanging with Nicaragua, and I learned about global education through art with them, and then my eyes were open to the world of development education.
Years ago I trained as a teacher in secondary school, but before I settled down into the classroom I decided I should go and see a bit of the world. So before I knew it, I was teaching in a school in a slum in Port of Spain, Trinidad. What I learned there was not only some of the answers to development and how we must approach development, but also how we must approach education as well. So there was a really nice mix of development and education.
I think for Aidlink, we're a small organisation working in partnership. And I suppose as we have moved into the 21st century, and it's very different, relationships with particularly Africa are very different, I think, than when I started out. I think there is less volunteerism, there is less engagement at the level that I had a chance to engage. So for us, sharing information and knowledge and engaging young people in the discussions and the decisions about the way the world works is quite important.
Well, I suppose for me, development education is an active, creative process. Development education for me is also good education because it's very inclusive and very democratic in how in its approach, and incorporates group work and I suppose questioning and critical thinking. So all really good skills that young people and adults are building throughout their lives.
I think it is really important for people to understand how the world works. And development education is a way of giving people, I suppose, the information and the tools and the skills, and helping them to make decisions about the type of world that they want to live in.
It's a lifelong process. It's very dynamic in its approach. It's about knowledge, skills and attitudes. We live in a very complex world, and it's really questioning that world.
It's not just that it fills a gap in Irish education, it actually is really central to how Irish education needs to change, to tap into the energy that young people have of wanting to change the world now and wanting help to do that.
Very often, the answers that people are given to very logical questions like, why do we still have hunger in the world? Why do we still have absolute poverty? The answers that are offered are very often extremely simplistic. Development education is much more interesting and much more challenging than that. It's about asking questions about how do we understand why hunger persists? Why do we still continue to manufacture poverty?
And we see development education as a sort of transformative experience where learners can learn knowledge and skills about the world, but also kind of connect with their own sense of agency, their own sense of being able to do something about that, whether it's a small action at home or whether it's a larger action in another part of the world.
It is very challenging in that it invites us to answer questions, not just to ask them. I think anyone can ask a question, but we need to answer questions about the world we live in, about the kind of world we want, about the types of values that we adhere to.
DevelopmentEducation.ie is a portal for resources for any educator to engage in development education.
The reason for working together in DevelopmentEducation.ie is because that's the most effective, efficient and useful way to support people in their attempts to understand the nature and shape of the world.
The development of the consortium over the years has just strengthened that basic principle.
Ultimately, all the development education agencies are working towards the same common goal.
No one's going to solve this agenda alone. So partnership is absolutely vital.